On today's episode, I have discovered that Jimmy is a 62 baby. I'm a 62 baby, and this is episode 62. So there's some coincidences there. We didn't engineer it like that, but there you go. And we talk about young people developing entrepreneurial skills to see them out into the future, because it's a different future, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, very different future.
Yeah. And Jimmy's starting, has started, and you've been working on it for a while, an academy. Jimmy, tell me, what is it called and how do people find out about it?
It's a Young Entrepreneurs Academy. At the moment, it's just in one school here on the Sunshine Coast, although I'm sure that it's going to develop into more schools. And if you want to get any more information on it, just get in contact with me. And my website, jimmibradbury.com, or at Jimmi Bradbury on all the socials. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Watch right through to the end, share the story, and enjoy. Hello and welcome to Stories from the Red Couch, episode 62. I'm Robin Cook, and today my guest is Jimmi Bradbury. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm very well, thank you, Robin.
Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
You got a little bit lost on the way here?
I certainly did.
Yeah,
that's not knowing this area very well, but I should do.
Yeah. But you made it all right, and here we are, and away we go.
And it's a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. You're heading off somewhere tomorrow, aren't you?
I'm going to San Francisco tomorrow.
That's exciting.
It is, yes. I haven't been to California for quite a while now. I lived there for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy going back to California.
Why are you going?
I've got two clients. One is in San Francisco, the other one's in LA, and the LA client is coming up to San Francisco. And I'm going to also going to a conference there for a day as well.
Okay, that's fabulous. So tell me, what is your business about? Because it's quite extensive, and you have years and years and years of experience. So what is it that you do?
What I do is I inspire people. I help people. How do I do that? I help them solve their problems, usually in business, but invariably, because a big component of business is also issues dealing with life. And I help them solve their problems. And what I do is use the experience and knowledge, and I guess that's to an extent my perspective that I've gained over the last 30 years to be able to help them. Because most of the issues that people face in business are ones that we've all faced. And I think that if you can help people, then it becomes, a really important thing for me anyway to do in life.
So is that in helping people, do you find that people inherently know the way forward for themselves, but for whatever reason have roadblocks or are just unable to see the way forward? Or is it more that they actually just don't have a clue?
I think the number one thing with most people is that they're just totally overwhelmed and they can't get any clarity about what it is they want to do. They know they can get to another level. They know that, but they just don't know how to get there.
Okay.
And I think particularly today, when we have got so much information available to us, we don't need any more information, we've got it all. And huge distractions, online and offline. I think it's just compounding the issue for them. That's probably the most common thing with people that come to me, is that they just don't have the clarity and they're just totally overwhelmed.
So, I mean, do you suggest they go for a walk and have a swim, or do some surfing, or hang out in the bush for a bit? Is that an element of helping people through those problems?
I think it's just it's about getting an understanding of what it is that they want to do, because I certainly believe that human beings are very, very powerful people. Very powerful, and they can do anything they want. But a lot of it is, they don't really have the right focus and clarity up here to be able to envisage what it is they want to do and how they're going to get there.
I was watching one of your videos. I mean, your website is fantastic, and there's so much information on there, and some great pieces of content. that is really helpful. And one of the things that I was watching, you were talking about a friend of yours, and you and he, Simon was his?
Shane,
sorry.
yeah.
You moved to London. You finished college and you went to London. I'm interested in understanding how you managed to do that as a young person, go to another city and just re-establish yourself. How do you find the resilience, and how do you support yourself in those sort of circumstances?
It's quite interesting. I'm asked that question a lot.
Okay.
And I met Shane when I was 6-7 years old. The first day I went to boarding school. We went to school together, and we obviously continued through school till we left when we were 17, and then we went to college together. And we graduated from college in the mid-80s. And I don't know if you're familiar with that time, but certainly in Ireland, it was a huge recession, and there was no work. I think there was only one person in our whole year that got a job. And I came from a family who, the idea of staying at home and doing nothing was just not on the cards. Right or wrong, that's just the way they were. So
Probably right, really.
and
in the world.
And if there was no work in Ireland, you had to look elsewhere. And at that time, I'd never gone beyond Ireland. And I have a lovely family, and I had a lot of great friends that I grew up with in Ireland. And the thought of going somewhere on a boat, as it was, to a country called England, was just beyond belief. And it's what I had to do, because if I was going to get any work, it was going to be in England. So I got the boat, and I remember it well, mid-80s, and then got the train from where I got off the boat in a place called Holyhead down to London. And it was just unbelievable, because Dublin, which is the biggest city in Ireland, is less than 1 million people, or it was in those days. And I was coming into London, a capital city of the world where there's 13 million people. It was just unbelievable. And for me, that was overwhelming, totally overwhelming.
Yes.
But I knew that my goal was to get a job. So I got some really dingy accommodation that my mother, after a few months, came over and inspected, and it was pretty bad. And then just did the door knocking in London, and eventually came across a couple of places where they gave me interviews, and I got a job. And I guess for me, that was the beginning of my journey. Looking back on it now, 30 years of living and working around the world, London being the first point of call, because I haven't been back to Ireland to work. I've never worked in Ireland other than a summer job. So I've never worked in a professional capacity in Ireland. But I go back to Ireland once a year to see my family.
Of course, that's amazing. And so in recognising that in yourself as a teenager,
Yes.
as you were at the time, now you are starting to work on a project with some teenagers here on the Sunshine Coast, aren't you?
Yeah.
What does that bring for you in working with the teenagers? And tell me about what it is that you're doing with them.
Right, okay. So the context around it is I spent the first 6 months of this year interviewing and talking to the clients that I've got and have had in the past that live and work around the world. And I brought them together in a report, which was essentially about 100, just over 100 clients from all around the world, the Middle East, the Far East, America, places where I've lived. And I really kind of just got an understanding of where it is they saw things going in the future. Okay. And some of the things that really surprised me were it wasn't just about growth of their company, but it was about embracing what is actually happening in the world today, which is huge change. And largely driven by technology, by the internet, by social media. And when I really thought about who that change could impact most, I thought to myself, it was the next generation. Because I believe for the first time ever, it's the younger generation who are actually showing the older generation the way forward. in many respects. I think there's also issues that they have to deal with, but I think in the main, because they've grown up with technology, they're hardwired very different to our generation, very different, and to any other generation. And I think controversially, that's why I think a lot of the parents of this generation don't understand them, because they're hardwired very differently. They see things very differently. But with that comes huge opportunities that they've got. So I set about seeing how possibly I could take that knowledge and that experience that I gained, not just in my working career, but the study I did at the beginning of this year, and be able to reach out to the younger generation, because I have a daughter myself who's 23. She lives in England, and she's got 3 businesses that she owns. 3 businesses at 23.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But that's I think typical, maybe not the 3 businesses, but that's typical of this generation that we call the millennials, of what opportunity they've got.
That's right, because it's not just about having a job, which in our parents' generation it was a job for life.
Yes.
In our generation, it's not a job for life, and in our children's generation, they are the job that they can take from place to place.
Yes.
Is that what you would see them as?
Absolutely. I think they get this situation where no longer do they have to follow that path that was always set out for us. So you went to school, then you went to college, or you went to TAFE, or you got a trade, and then you worked in the job for 40 hours a week for 40 years to, at the end of it, get 40% of your salary, called a pension. And usually as well, on top of that, the gift of a huge debt, which is a mortgage. And I think the generations say, there's other ways to do this. And there certainly is other ways to do it, definitely. Mainly leveraging off other resources, whether it be technology or people, to be able to do things a lot differently than what we were taught was the way forward in life. Yeah.
So how do young people create these businesses now? How easy or difficult? Because we're not talking necessarily bricks and mortar, are we?
No. Well, I think it comes back when I begin to go into the schools now and talk to them about the academy program, Young Entrepreneurs Academy program. It's more about it's a two-way street. The schools, I think, have got to change the way they teach their students. The days of just teaching numeracy and literacy are fine and still hold, but they need to go beyond that. They need to teach them how to be more problem solving, be more creative, use their imagination, and they also need to teach them how it is they can use their emotional and their emotional intelligence.
And that's because that's what employers and the marketplace is demanding? Yes, to an extent. But I think if they're really going to be successful in taking this opportunity of being able to start up businesses in their very young stages, one of the most important things for an entrepreneur, and particularly young entrepreneur, is to be aware of their emotions, to be aware of what's actually happening around them, as well as being creative and using your imagination. And I think a lot of what people face when we come back to the original question about the overwhelm and the lack of clarity is they're just not aware of themselves as a person, and then they're not aware of what's actually going on around them. So I can give you an example. Yes.
In the mornings, and I teach this to all of my clients who in the main take it on, and they say it really increases their productivity. The first part of the day is the most important part of your day, when you actually collect yourself and your thoughts and really just try and bring some peace and harmony to your life before you get out into that world of the demands and distractions of what is part of everyday life. So for example, one of the things I recommend to my clients that they do is they never ever keep their phone in their bedroom. Never keep their phone in their bedroom, because whilst it's great to communicate with people, it's a big distraction. I've so many people that the first thing they do in the morning is they switch on their phone before they talk to their partner, or they talk to their children, or they talk to their family. First thing they do is switch on their phone. You know what they do? They check their emails, or they check social media. For me, emails are nothing else but somebody else's agenda. And if you're getting sucked into somebody else's agenda first thing in the morning without sorting out yourself, you're on a spiral down. And I'm not surprised people are overwhelmed. Or they're getting sucked into other people's wonderful lifestyle that is apparently out there on social media. They're just getting sucked in. So what you need to do is spend the time with yourself. Meditation, eating good food, spending time with your partner, spending time with your family, and then taking off. You know, it's kind of quite ironic going to San Francisco tomorrow, but I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a series of hills. But it's a bit like, you imagine a truck up at the top of the hill. You know, what you want to do in the morning is keep that truck up there as long as possible, because once that truck starts moving down the hill, it just takes off. And that's what happens in our life.
Yes.
But most people wake up in the morning and the truck's already going down the hill 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So kind of getting an awareness of your own emotions, then the people around you, particularly the people that are important, your family, your friends, your work colleagues, and then engaging in the world. So I think that's really an important component to be able to help the younger people with today, because, you know, they're impacted by technology in a big way.
Tremendously. So how do you say that to a teenager? How do you get them to disengage with that when that is really where they're being caught up in?
I think you've got to get them to really understand what it is they want to do in life, and what are the things that really interest them, and the fact that they can do anything, and more so now than ever. If they set their mind to it and they have a clear path on how they're going to get there, with the help of a mentor or a coach, because that's something I wish I really had when I was their age, young age. You know, if you've got the ability to think that you can do anything you set your mind to, and have the help of a good mentor and a coach, and have a group of people around you who are there supporting you and who've got your back, then you've got the main ingredients to be successful. And also to realize that, you know, anything that you do in life, if you are going to do things differently, there will always be people who will try and put you down. But in the main, it's, you know, the majority of people will support you.
So what do you envisage this academy to look like? What, you know, on the ground, day-to-day kind of thing?
Well, it's going to be an adjunct to the main school curriculum. So like you have a music academy and a sports academy, you'll have a young entrepreneurs academy. There will be a structured curriculum that I am writing, that essentially will deal with two things, and that will be taking an idea that they've got, or if they haven't got an idea, helping them formulate an idea, especially something that they're really passionate about, and being able to take that idea and problem solve and use their imagination as to how that idea could solve a problem, and whether or not there might be people who might be interested in it. So taking them on a bit of a journey, and eventually, hopefully, if things work out, being able to present to a kind of a Shark Tank table of business people who, you know, will give them the opportunity to really understand whether it has got merits to be able to take into the business world. So that's one side of it. And then the other side of it is to be able to use technology to be able to potentially, you know, scale that into, you know, a big opportunity, because today we've got an opportunity where we can set up a business, you know, like this interview. We potentially have got the opportunity where 1 million people around the world can know about your idea. And we've never had this kind of opportunity before. Never ever had this opportunity where you can set up a business today and tomorrow 1 million people can know about it. That's a really significant thing for young people. I mean, it's a significant thing for older people to get their head around. How do you maintain that groundedness? And I know that you said before you don't look at your phone and you don't do this and don't do that, but
You know, it's so tempting to get caught up in that, and it's so tempting to live your life completely outside of your own body, in a sense. What are you going to do with the kids so that they do have that sense of self and sense of place and community, so that they feel like they're connected to that physical community plane in all of that?
Yeah. Okay, well, I think, you know, there's a couple of things. I tell this story a lot because I'm particularly impacted by them. Living here in Australia, I swim every morning down at the Sunshine Coast University swimming pool. And down there's, you know, 20 Olympic swimmers, yeah, mixture between the Paralympians and the able-bodied Olympians. And most of them are kids. Most of them are kids, you know, 16, 17, 18, 19. And pretty much all of them will swim at Tokyo in the Olympic Games in 2 years' time. And for them, they kind of epitomize, you know, how it is you can be successful in life, you know, it's successful in anything you do. Yes, you need to have talent, and I firmly believe you're not born with that talent, and the swimmers will tell me that they weren't born as swimmers. You have to have the talent, but you can learn that. And you've got to work hard at it, absolutely, and you've got to be dedicated and you've got to be focused. But I think the bit that they really get is that they know mentally that in order to succeed, there's a couple of things. They've got to be physically fit, they've got to be mentally fit, and they've got to be emotionally fit, because when they get up on the blocks of a Commonwealth final or an Olympic final or a world final, they know, like everybody else, the emotions that we all have rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. And they get to a point where they say, what's more important, because we're in a huge event, is that I know how I'm going to feel in this event. So they're able to use their feelings to keep their emotions down, such that the feelings become much more stronger than the emotions, because in most cases people just allow their emotions just to come up and up and up, bypass the feelings, and then what happens? They start telling us stories. They start telling us stories why we shouldn't do this. And that is then compounded by the fact that they give you a really good cop-out to say, well, you actually don't have to do this now, and you'll be okay. But if you actually are able to suppress those emotions in a way you want to say, I want to feel really good in this moment, then that can be such a powerful thing. And I think this is the kind of thing that I'm really getting at with the kids, that they really need to work hard on, is their own well-being, their own emotions, their own to an extent spirituality, but it's more about how it is they conduct themselves as a person.
That's so interesting.
And being really connected with both themselves and with the community. And I know that's a really difficult thing today with social media, but the reality of it is, as I teach them, is that it's more important that you, and this is quite a difficult thing, it's more important that you actually engage people then you get people to like you. And I think they find this quite difficult, because a lot of them just want to get the likes, the likes, the likes, the likes. Right. And then they get the withdrawal symptoms because they don't get all of these likes. But it's much more important to engage with people, you know, face to face, or on, you know, even on social media, but do it in a way that you actually engage. Yeah.
You've brought something for our table. We didn't put it on the table, but you've brought something.
Yes.
Man's Search for Meaning. And I think that fits in what we've just been talking about. Tell me about this book.
It's a book that I was introduced to about 3 or 4 years ago, and in many ways it actually came at a changing moment in my life, where when I was given it, somebody said, you know, this is a book you should read. I'd heard about it before, but I'd never read it before. Essentially, it's a book that was written by an Austrian psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, who spent, I think it was 3 or 4 years in 5 different German concentration camps during the Second World War. And he lost pretty much all of his family in those concentration camps. He was in Auschwitz and 4 others. And he realized that the meaning of life was really understanding that when you have a situation that's presented to you, that everything in life can be taken away from you except for one thing and one thing only, and that's how we choose to respond to that situation. And I think that for me is such a powerful thing, because it's that equation, isn't it? E plus R equals O. E being the event that happens in our life, R being how we respond, and O being the outcome. That the real factor in there is R. And we can choose. It's our choice how we respond to it. Nobody else's choice. When an event happens, we can choose. And he believed that if people had the right frame of mind, they could actually go through hell and still feel they had a meaning in life.
Yes.
If they responded in that way. And we see it today. People give up so easily, or they react to a situation that really, you don't need to do it in that way. But if you think about how it is you are as a person and how it is you want to choose, we have that, and it's been extended now, because you have that 5-second period when the stimulus happens, and there's a gap when you then decide what you're going to do and how you're going to respond to it. And we all have that window, but for a lot of us, a lot of people, they just react immediately rather than thinking about how it is and going to respond to it. So
I'm going to have to read that, because it's come across my vision over the last couple of weeks. So thank you for bringing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And thanks for coming.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
It was such an interesting thing, and I'm keen to see how your academy develops and what sort of outcomes.
Well, I'm very passionate about it, because I think in life we all have a responsibility to give back.
Yes.
And I want to be able to give back that experience to the younger generation, because I really think they're going to benefit from it. But also, I'm going to use any of the proceeds, or a percentage of the proceeds, to give to a charity as well.
Fabulous.
Because I think that it's also about helping less well-off people as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Jimmi. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Share our story, share Jimmy's story on various social media platforms, but not first thing in the morning. No. Yeah.
No. Not first thing in the morning.
That's right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. And in 62 episodes, that's pretty good.
62?
Yeah. Yeah, you're 62.
I was born in 1962.
Oh, I was too. I'm going to say that. I'm going to have to say that, because I'm the 62 baby too.